Happy Monday. So, we are here to speak blessings over our days, our weeks, our months, our years, our hours, our minutes, our seconds. And as part of the Neville Goddard discussion every Monday, I was having a tough time kind of deciding what to talk about today. And then something kind of made sense when I realized the day that I spent today, although enjoyable, was not quite how I wanted to spend the day. So, what would that lend itself to? Well, I thought about the wonderful chapter in The Power of Awareness called Failure. Now, he starts the chapter off by saying that you may experience failure using the law in some very important matters. And so that feels quite heavy, right? Obviously, we don't want to fail. So that is why sometimes we don't want to take risks. We don't want to try because we are scared that the outcome won't go our way. But if we treat failure as data, as no big deal, because it does happen to everyone. If you think about it, Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, went to over 370 investors, I believe, before someone said yes to take his bean roasting business to a cafe level. They didn't see it as something that the US was going to go for back in the 70s. And then obviously we fast forward to today, and sure, there have been, struggles within that company, as any big company will face struggles, but it clearly is still a big company with a lot of clout and a lot of things that have spilled over into other businesses. And obviously they've learned from other businesses, right? If we learn from someone else's mistakes, or we learn from something that someone else does that's a success, even better. And we can apply those things to ourselves. But if we take the sting out of failure and just look at it as data, and we don't have to compound it and make ourselves feel worse, then we've got a good place to start again. So in the chapter on failure, the one thing he says is, if you can say to yourself that you persisted and you did not waver, then what could be the cause? And my answer is a little bit different than his, because I think that I go with what Abraham Hicks says about anything that we see that's not showing up properly to us in our lives, as, we're taking score too soon, because timing is none of our business. The universe will give us that thing when it is time for us to have that thing. And so, looking at failure as data and not using it as an excuse to stop, but using it as an excuse to reevaluate and keep going, that's the sweet spot. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with failure, because with failure is how we learn. Years ago, I was new to my industry, so I work in TV and film. And when you are green in any job, and when you're at the start of your professional career, of course you're nervous, of course you're worried about screwing up. Those things are natural, and you can work on releasing those emotions when you feel them and are aware of them and recognize them, to have less instances that don't go well. And for myself, I wasn't at that point yet. I was not near ready enough for this work. I hadn't even started looking at Abe yet. So I remember, trying to bond with someone and bringing up her relationship, because it was one of the only things I knew about her, and the person with whom she was in a relationship with was someone who I had worked with and worked with quite closely. So in a small pool for me of people I had known, this was something I could try to connect with her on. And I'd only seen her for a handful of times since I knew that they had gotten together. And it was, probably maybe the third or fourth time, I don't remember how many, that I hadn't seen them together, but I'd seen her. So I was just asking how he was and whatever. And she said, you know what, it's not going well. And every time I see you and you bring it up, it makes me feel worse. And, if I had decided that that meant that I wouldn't be able to connect with people in the workplace, I mean, I would have a very different career, right? We can't hold on to things when we make a misstep. We can use it as data. And so, yes, it was before this work, but I used it as data. And it just lent me more towards the idea of being very judicious about people and their relationships. And I generally do not ask people about their relationships. I allow them to bring their relationships to me in quandaries, and I will see both parties in their fullest of health positively, or if they've had a negative experience, I will do the same thing. I just want to see them living in the end, see them happy and healthy and thriving. So it could have been construed as a failure, but instead, of course, because it is data, it was something I was able to then mentor with someone else. We were at a party, and so I would have been 4 or 5 years after this experience, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And we were at a party when we were wrapping on an independent movie, and one of the actors was quite young. I think she was 18 at the time. And one of the actors in the movie had brought a date, and they were same sex. And so this actor, the young actor, was asking questions about their relationship. And when the first person had left the room, so the person she did not know, she was peppering with questions. And so when he had left the room and I was talking to her, or she was making a statement that, oh, it was weird that he didn't want to disclose. And I said, well, maybe they're not ready to disclose. Like maybe, they just are where they are, and they don't really want to publicly state anything. Like perhaps this is brand new. Like we don't know. And so it's best, obviously, when we've just met someone, to go into lighter, kind of topics instead of something so personal, like right away. And I think relationship status is definitely one of those. And so I was able to mentor someone because of my misstep and because of something that I had said that had put someone else on the spot. So I was able to share something that had happened to me and how I was able to kind of look at it differently. And, it's always nice to let people have their personal space for their own affairs. And of course, if they want to discuss something, that's, fine. We can be a sounding board to people. But at the end of the day, if we can see everyone in their fullest of health, if we can see them as Jesus did, as thriving, as successful, as having everything they want, then we are, as Abraham would say, we're holding them as objects of our positive attention. And that can but benefit people, which is why Jesus's notion of turning the other cheek, that is how to forgive, is by not, exasperating the offense, right? It's just turning the other cheek and allowing those people to be where they are, because everyone is where they are and everyone is doing the best they can in any moment. And so if we can just let them be and love them anyway, love ourselves anyway, then we are setting ourselves up to enjoy more, to be happier, to love more. The more you love, the easier it is to love more. Anything we are looking at, our attention towards what we're looking at, momentum will make that thing grow, right? So what we're looking at becomes more. So if we're spending some time appreciating something or someone, our appreciation and what was the other word I used? I've already forgotten it. But if we're appreciating and loving and being thankful for someone, looking at them can only inspire love to grow deeper within us for them. As we look at love, love gets bigger. So I know that I got off topic from the chapter of failure a bit, but I think these things are still really important. And when people, I will add this before we get back on topic, that I will say that when people bring illness to me in a statement, I generally just don't speak illness out loud when I'm feeling a little bit of dis-ease, not disease, dis-ease inside my body, because I've had maybe some thoughts that don't feel good and I haven't taken care of them. And that's when we notice a sore throat, or that's when we notice, we've got, maybe some congestion, all of those kind of things, an ache or a pain here or there that maybe is unsubstantiated in other ways. Say, we walked for 2 hours yesterday, so maybe we will feel something in our heat or in our hips or our knees or our feet, right? Our legs. It's possible, right? Obviously, we put our body through experiences. You're going to feel a little something. So if it's unsubstantiated, then that is due to consists of negative thoughts, and then it shows up on our body, which is just that extra mindfulness of, oh, okay, I've been thinking some negative thoughts and they are not serving me, and I can do something about that now with my awareness. So anyway, people bring a complaint to me, and I do try to be compassionate, because compassion feels better than sympathy, pity for people, or empathy even, because empathy can bring you down to where they're feeling, and then I have less resources to help them, because then I've lost my buoyancy and I'm coming to where they are to try to be where they are. Whereas if I remain where I am and I'm compassionate and I'm with them and I want better for them, then I'm asking for their improvement as well. I'm asking on their behalf for an improvement. I'm holding them as an object of attention. And it just feels like a nicer, kinder way for yourself to be. It feels like you can offer more from a place of, I've got my stability, I've got my compassionate cloak is on, so I can feel that obviously you're going through a tough time, but I can see you through the other side. I know that tough times mean abundance on the other side. It's ready for you and building for you, because anytime we ask, it is given. And if we're not allowing it, then that desire just grows and remains in our escrow until we go get it and until we allow it. So, even for ourselves, when we notice we're hard on ourselves and we have repetitive negative thoughts about a subject that hasn't, a desire that hasn't come to that full fruition yet in the world of appearances, well, that's our moment right there to give it to ourselves in imagination, right? The kingdom of heaven is within, and it is our Father's good pleasure to give it to us, is a favorite of mine. And that's just always a reminder to me. Imagination is God's playground. Imagination is, God's consciousness attempting to become alive in the body. So if we give it to ourselves in imagination and we make that a priority, then we are setting ourselves up to see it in the world of appearances. Like Neville said, I see it, or I saw it, I see it, I continue to see it until it presents itself in the world of appearances in this reality. But I continue to see it. I continue to see it. I persist until it shows itself to me. And so, the very idea of persistence is something that we can build upon. And that will lead me back to the power of awareness, the chapter on failure. The most important takeaway for me was, of course, Neville says, well, we can change this at any time. We can change these things that have been points of failure in the past. All of that is changeable by us, by persisting again. And so Neville talks about, it's not the length of time that you are in the wish fulfilled, it's the frequency. So if you want to be married, you can feel for that wedding ring as often as you think of it, as often even as a negative thought comes to mind about, well, I haven't met anyone yet or whatever. You just go to that wedding ring and you just imagine. And of course, these are a little bit gender norms from the 60s and the 50s. But Neville had said, so for women, you are feeling for that wedding ring and you're feeling the admiration for the one that put it there. And for men, that you were imagining, more responsibility in taking care of someone. So you can put on whatever qualities you think of in how you would like your relationship to be if you wanted to be married. You can use the wedding ring, the feeling it. And if you're like, oh, I don't know how to feel it in my imagination. So Neville always talked about starting with balls. You start with a tennis ball. You feel the fuzziness of the tennis ball. And then you switch to a baseball and you feel the smoothness of the leather and you feel the stitching. And you feel the weight. That they feel like they're different weights. Oh, and you can feel a golf ball and you can feel those divots and you can feel how small it is and that you can close your hand all the way over it and you can feel its weight. You can feel that it weighs differently than the other two. You can go to the piece of silk and you can stroke the piece of silk and obviously feel that it is, it's so pliable in your hand, right? Obviously very different from a ball. Then you can go to the wedding ring and you can feel it. You can twist it and you could admire the person that put it there, right? So you can make this frequency as many times as you need to feel good, because when we're feeling good, we're obviously in the state of the wish fulfilled. That's a given. That's why Abraham talks about caring about how you feel. When you care about how you feel and you're willing to do something about it to change how you're feeling, you automatically go into the state of the wish fulfilled because you recognize your imagination as real. You give it birth in your imagination by constantly going to that imaginal act. So when it comes to failure, just to wrap up, we know it's data. Failure is changeable by us, so we don't have to feel bad about it. We don't have to feel bad if something very important didn't come to fruition. I'll give you one my mom said. My mom always said that there's two things she said that I love, but one of them was, crap, I lost it. It'll come back to me. We're talking about failure. We're talking about what my mom said. Uh-oh. I'm not going to go back because I'm enjoying the rest of this video. So two things my mom said about failure. I'll come back to it. Okay, so when it comes to looking at failure, Neville Goddard style, we are using it as data. We're not holding ourselves in some paralyzed place of I failed, I'm nothing, none of that. That's not a thing. We are looking at it in a different light. It is data and it is changeable by us. It just means more persisting. It means more frequency of persisting and dwelling in the end. Daring to dwell in the end. Daring to assume you're the person we wish to be now. And then you're in the state again. And then you're in the state again. And those two wonderful things my mom said are not coming to me. So the other thing is, of course, when people bring us complaints, let's be compassionate. Let's be kind. Let's just go to the end for them and see that thing is solved. One thing I like to say to people is, when they bring small complaints to me is, and that's okay, we are where we are. another thing to come back to before the end of the video. So we are where we are. Everyone responds from where they're at, and we're all at different spots in our journeys, and it's okay. But if we see them in the end, what I will say to people is, oh, it's decided. Yeah, we fixed that. That's going to be really good. My dear friend, recently had an amazing birthday celebration, and we were pre-paving, is what Abe calls it. We were pre-paving all the way to make sure that it was a gorgeous, gorgeous day. She had an amazing rockin' turnout. It was fantastic. And we did that by, going into our heart of hearts, and like when minor hiccups happen, it doesn't matter because it's going to work out. It's going to get worked out. It's going to get worked out. This is going to get worked out. We can relax into it. And staying relaxed is a real key thing too, because if you're relaxed, you're in the state. If you feel good, you're in the state. If you're relaxed, you're in the state. So again, we're kinder to ourselves about failure because it is temporary. And the thing is, we are eternal. So we can have as many failures along the way. I mean, you look at anybody who's achieved anything. They have failures, right? They just do, but they keep going, right? It's not that you were, it's not that you went down 7 times. It's that you got back up the 8th time. I think that might be Muhammad Ali, but don't quote me on that. But so that's the thing. It's just getting up again. And it doesn't have to be a big, huge, oh, it's so hard to get back up again or anything like that. Because if we take the sting out of the failure by going, well, this is data, this is useful to me, this is information, I get to use something about this, I get to do something about this. Oh, you know what? Maybe I did indulge in negative thoughts a little too much. Maybe I didn't catch them early, and, maybe I dwelled, because that's one thing too, is we want to dwell in the wish fulfilled. We don't want to dwell in the worry or the fear or the doubt. It just doesn't serve us. But, our human brains want to solve problems. So when the doubt or the fear or the worry comes up, and you're not in immediate danger, like Joseph Murphy talks about, fear is a good thing. If you are in immediate danger, do something, right? That's different. That is a total valid fear. It's keeping you alive, right? And so that's great. So we never want to be mad at fear. But if you know in your heart of hearts that you are in that moment that you're not gonna die, you are fine, you're just going into the future without the stability of your now, and we can come back to our now with our breath. We can breathe and come back to our now, right? We always have our breathing. We have lots of things we can put in a toolbox. We can just start thinking about things that we love. Speaking of just tell you this one quick story, starting in film and television, I felt so unsteady and unsure because there was so much to learn, and timing is such a huge thing to kind of figure out when you first start. It's, you don't know how long things take yet. You don't know how long you're going to need for XYZ. You don't know when is an appropriate time to bug someone for something that you need. You just have to learn kind of the process of everybody else at work and see how each department does things so that you can kind of get an idea of when to talk to people, because a lot of it is intuitive that you have to figure out yourself. No one's really standing around telling you that. I mean, you obviously can ask certain departments about how long we think until XYZ, but it is kind of something that if you are on the floor in a production, so this is in production, this is live action production, you kind of have to have a pulse on, or like you have to have your hand on the pulse of that and like understand how things progress so that you kind of get an idea when to do things. Anyway, I remember running to get something. They were about to call the roll and we needed something, and so I raced and they held the roll for us, and I was so proud of myself because I got this thing we needed for this take. But the supervisor on the floor, the on-set key is what the supervisors on the floor are called, of my department, said to me, well, we shouldn't have held the roll for that. You have to kind of go get that during the number of takes, and when we get it back, then we can add to it. Like, it wasn't something that we should have been holding for. So I got chewed out on that one, and of course you feel bad, and it's like this opportunity to learn. But if you don't have your stability of, well, just because I made a mistake doesn't mean that I'm not worthwhile, doesn't mean that I'm not a good person, doesn't mean XYZ, then you can flounder a little bit. And one thing I found to help, because I made a lot of mistakes while I was learning, and you would get to work with different people, and obviously different people are going to want different things, and you're trying to like make it all work. You're trying to figure out how these different people work. Again, another challenge. So one thing that I had read, and I'm sure it was from, a book on coping with when you feel anxiety, was you just make a list of things you love. You just make a list of 5 things you love, and you allow yourself to focus on those things. And that was a tool in my toolbox. We're talking about the toolbox that really helped me. So when it comes to failure, you are not a failure. Something happened that didn't work out. There was a mistake. You made a mistake. We all make mistakes. We are human. Mistakes are how we learn, or part of the ways of how we learn. I do believe we can learn from successes just as well. But this is how we learn, especially when we're starting a new thing. A mistake is just data. It's just how we learn. So there's nothing wrong in that. It's what we do next with it. So when we're falling down 7 times, we're getting up the 8th time and we're still going. If you don't quit, you never lose. So, and that doesn't mean that you don't make new decisions about something that's not for you once you've learned more information. It just means just keep going. Just keep going and keep looking in the direction of your desires. Like looking towards what you want. So, and with failure, one of the ways to take that data and use it is to just persist a little more. Just a little more. You don't have to effort on it. You just have to allow yourself to think more about what you want than what you don't want. You just have to allow yourself into the state by knowing you deserve it. The kingdom of heaven is within. It is our Father's good pleasure to give it to us. So we have to allow it in. It is already given. It's up to us. It's all about allowing. So frequency is key for this, because the more we practice the frequency of what we want, it doesn't have to be the length of time, as Neville said. So the more we practice the frequency of what we want, the more we are going to be in the state, right? We're going to be in the state of the wish fulfilled when we're taking a time out to enjoy the frequency of what we want, right? So going to that well and try 3 times a day, especially when you get up and before you go to bed, are both of your most susceptible times to really be in that state. And then halfway through the day, it doesn't hurt to go back and just, if you're looking for a relationship, just to feel the wedding ring, feel the admiration for the person that put it there, right? And just to enjoy that and just to feel it as yours. And these things will help you assume more frequently that you are the person you wish to be. This is how we do it. Frequency, compassion for others and seeing them in their fullest of health, compassion for ourselves and seeing ourselves in our fullest of health, and knowing that mistakes and failures are not the end. They are data. They are information, and they are temporary, unlike us who are eternal. So this one was longer, so if you're still listening, thank you so much. And yeah, let's have a kick-ass week. Let's have a kick-ass rest of our week. Okay, ciao.